Question number 3, Dr. Jian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. What recent reports has he received about the growth outlook of the New Zealand economy?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, today the Reserve Bank issued its monetary policy statement for March with updated forecasts that the economy will grow by 3 to 4% over each of the next 2 years after estimated growth of over 3% in 2014. The bank says the domestic economy remains strong, supported by growth in employment and construction activity. Business investment and household income and consumption are moderately strong, supported by low interest rates, high net migration and rising house prices and the flow-on effects of high commodity export prices in the last dairy season. As they pointed out, of course, there are some risks to this scenario over the next couple of years. They also forecast annual inflation to March 2015 would be 0, which I think is unprecedented, and revised down their estimates of increases in the cost of living to 1.3% for the year to March 2016.
Supplementary question, Dr. Jian.
What does the Reserve Bank see as the main drivers of inflation and the economic outlook?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, the Reserve Bank says that headline inflation forecasts reflect a high exchange rate, weak global inflation and falling oil prices. So effectively, New Zealand is importing deflation from offshore. Domestic or non-tradable inflation is higher at 2.4%, but it does remain well below the long-term average. Oil prices are expected to remain at their current level over the next 2 years, moderating tradables inflation and boosting incomes and economic activity. The Reserve Bank says the outlook for the economy depends on these 4 factors: oil prices, dairy prices and farmers' spending, domestic capacity pressures and the housing market.
Supplementary question, Dr. Jian.
What is the role of housing in the outlook from the Reserve Bank?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Reserve Bank seems to spend a lot of time focusing on the housing market because in an economy where most things seem to be pointing towards sustained economic growth for some time, which will lift incomes and households across the country, the housing market in Auckland is one obvious imbalance. Projected building work continues to rise with the Canterbury rebuild, and building work continues to rise in response to the housing shortage in Auckland. House price inflation is being driven in part by net migration, also by falling interest rates, but also the Reserve Bank agrees with the government's view that shortage of supply is a critical driver of house price increases in Auckland.
Supplementary.
A supplementary question, Dr. Jian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. What steps is the government taking to improve housing supply and take pressure off interest rates?
Honourable
Well, Mr.
Bill English.
Speaker, of course, the critical thing about housing supply to understand is it's councils who make the decisions. So the government is working closely with councils to create special housing areas. We're reforming the RMA, which I know will have support from the opposition, who are keen to see the supply of housing expanded, and we're spending $1.9 billion a year on accommodation support. On the 1st of April, the government's Home Start program will get underway, and that will also encourage new supply of housing.
Question number 4, Phil Twyford.